everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. My name is Thomas Garcia. I'm a Democrat running for the State Board of Education, District 2. I'm from Hidalgo County. I just drove in. I want to make sure I can represent all 14 counties in our 2 million person district. The State Board of Education is one of those down ballot races you don't often hear too much about. But this year especially, it's going to be so crucial that we Democrats band together and focus on what's going on this State Board of Education. I'm an educator. My background is education changed my life. I wasn't supposed to go to college. I barely made it through high school. Teachers and counselors believed in me and didn't just say, here's another statistics on the page. Low-income household, first-generation college student, single-parent household. No one would have thought of giving me the resources, information, and the belief system to say he can go to college, much less an Ivy League school. But they did. And because of that, I was able to have the courage and the ability to click submit on the applications, and by the graces of the heavens, get into Princeton University. A lot of hard work and luck. I never forgot where I came from. I was 19 years old, my first semester done on the East Coast, and I never forgot. It was tough in high school. We didn't have the resources. Our teachers were overburdened. We were teaching to the test. Counselors wanted to help, but they didn't have the resources to help us out. A lot of my friends in the class of 2013 were going through the same issues. So I came back, I talked to our superintendent and said, how can I get started now? Change students' lives now through education. We started hosting summer institutes on college access, how to write essays, how to win scholarships, how to become a leader so when you get to college you can complete, not just get there. I did that for 4 years. My first job out of college was teaching high school at that same school district with my curriculum. Now today I take that curriculum and I teach at multiple schools in the Rio Grande Valley how to get students into college and make sure they complete college. I've been in the arena throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, in person and on Zoom. The State Board of Education is the entity that can make the difference when it comes to raising the standards for what our students are learning in the classroom. We talk a lot about canceling the STAR test and how it's not a good test to measure any type of student success. The question then is, what do we move it toward? I'm the only candidate in this race that's talking about computer science, equitable computer science programs for the future, making sure that our students are digitally literate in all the core courses, whether we're talking about misleading statistics in math or learning how to spot fake information on the internet in English course. We have an attack on our real history and real science in this state, Texas SB 3. A couple weeks ago, we had Martin Luther King Jr. Day. On the ground, teachers are telling me, I want to teach basic things like the civil rights movement, but SB 3 removed the requirement to teach the I Have a Dream speech. Now I'm afraid of teaching it because I'm afraid parents are going to complain I'm teaching critical race theory. We're chilling speech in the classroom and we're reducing opportunity for our students. And I'm pretty sure you saw that NPR article a couple days ago about 55% of our teachers are considering leaving the workforce. We are at a crisis moment, and the State Board of Education is the entity that can turn this around. I'm 28 years old. I'm in a 5-way primary, very much centered in South Texas along the US-Mexico border. I jumped in this race because of my students. About a year ago, I was Zooming with all my former students who are now in college trying to complete. One of my students who had COVID, who was homeless, who was Zooming from their car, telling me, thank you for being there, Thomas. I deeply appreciate this. Anything I could have done to help that student. Gave them funds, gave them COVID relief, gave them everything I could, including technology. It was one student, and I felt powerful that I could help one person. But the reality is that student fell through the cracks, and it shouldn't have taken me to uplift them. We need a better system to make sure they don't fall through the cracks in the first place. There's 5.4 million students just like that in our public school system. And we need to make sure that in the classrooms they are supported, in the hallways of the school they are seen, and that our schools are fully funded, that they're safe for our school workers. I'm proud that I have been endorsed by the Texas AFL-CIO, Texas AFT, thank you, and the Texas Parent PAC. I am the choice by teachers and the choice by parents because I listen and learn from everybody. I'm also the only candidate who has actually traveled to 14 counties and listened and learned from constituents, Democrats, Republicans, independents, parents, teachers, students, no matter how young they are, no matter how old they are. It matters that we show up. This is a big district, and this position, although it's down ballot, can make the big difference when it comes to what is going on in our classrooms in this decade. Are we going to be graduating students who are going out in the workforce, the military, or college, fully prepared to move Texas forward to the 21st century? I want to make sure that we have the mental health resources to take care of the short-term solution problems, We can solve the issues of students dropping out, teachers dropping out of the workforce by having mental health counselors. There's models throughout our district. I talk a lot about McAllen ISD, the city I live right next to, how they have a mental health counseling system in each of their high schools. Unfortunately funded by ESSER funds. It's going to run out next year. We need state funding for that. We need a State Board of Education member who can come in, analyze, collect data, get to the state board and say we need to replicate this and fund programs like this because it's working there, it can work up here, up district as well. We need someone who's going to talk openly about transparency and accountability in our school system. We need to make sure that when we send students to a school, no matter what kind of school it is, parents and students have easy to read, accessible information on high quality metrics on academics and financial solvency. It's not enough to have a 2-page PDF somewhere on the TEA website that takes 7 clicks to get to. We need to make it more accessible. We need to make it easier to read. We need to make it more relevant for our parents to make the right choice where they put their students in school. I'm the only candidate talking openly about trying to move toward the 21st century. I'm here to answer questions about the platform. I want to pass out my cards that has a link to my website. I have an issues page, the only candidate with one. I am in this race for the students. I want to make sure that that student I met over Zoom, that doesn't become an issue again, that we have a system that actually works. I'm tired of filling in the gaps. I've been doing that for 8 years. I'm ready to start closing the gaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Anybody have any questions for Thomas? Kathy, do you have any questions for him?
Yes, I do actually. Thank you. Early childhood education. You know, there just a brand new study was just published about how these academic public pre-Ks are damaging children instead of helping them. My concern is how do we get back to understanding child development and basing early childhood education on science?
It's a great question. When it comes to early development, not necessarily more quantity of days or quantity of programs, especially as it puts administrative load on teachers and counselors, but the quality of these programs. One aspect of these programs I've been learning on the ground, whether it's early development or in the high schools with the reading academies, at other schools or reading academies, is that there's good faith efforts, but there's not enough data collection. There's not enough input from the teachers and counselors on the ground actually implementing the programs. How it works in one school district, let's say rural versus more urban. There's not enough of that, and if there is, it often falls through the cracks. Maybe it gets to the State Board of Education, but then it doesn't actually get to the state legislature actually make a permanent fix to it.
And I think my concern is that decisions are made by people who know nothing.
Exactly. When it does get to the State Board of Education, it also falls into a committee, and who is on that committee? Because of the Republican control, it's often special interest groups, and that's often where it falls through the cracks. I do support more active individual control. What I've been advocating, the McAllen ISD program is one example. As an individual board member, I would take programs and projects that are working at model school districts, whether it's a mental health program or the program we're discussing, and spotlighting it at the state level, bringing in the teachers who are implementing the program to speak. Collect data in an effective way. I've been doing this for 8 years with College Access, where some school districts might not have a data collection system on enrollment, on financial aid completion. We come in and do that. I want to start doing that more with other issues, whether it's mental health or early development. We got to do that at the individual level. It's a lot of manual work, and sometimes the state just doesn't give us the resources to do it systemically. That's often why we fall short in this. But I want to work together with groups to learn more about the issues so I can work together and make sure we're getting that data to where it needs to go, whether it's the State Board of Education, getting qualified people to actually analyze and implement these policies, and then taking it to the state legislator with research-informed practices to get the funding and the legislation we need.
Does anybody else have any questions for Thomas? Karen.
Number one, I'm sorry. Can you speak up a little bit? I can barely hear you. Number two, a lot of charter schools, I mean, when they first started, they were supposed to be locally controlled. They help people with specific needs in those areas. But it has turned into a money-making business for out-of-state companies to come into Texas and exploit our charter school program. I mean, how would the State Board of Education address those problems?
Right now, a lot of charter school authority is placed on the unelected education commissioner, Mike Morad. And a lot of the control and the authority and oversight the State Board of Education should have on charter schools in or out of state control is not placed on us right now. I do support more legislation to take some of that authority away to make sure that there's a more democratic process and a more comprehensive review process on charter schools. There simply isn't enough information provided by charter schools often when they're asking for an approval or an expansion at the state board. And often when it comes to the expansions, these unlimited amendments for expansion often come from Mike Morath, the commissioner, rather than the State Board of Education. That needs to change. There's also an optional process for members to attend these interviews from TEA. I do think they should be mandatory and they should be integrated deeply and streamlined into the State Board of Education obligations and our requirements. Right now they're optional. And often because they're optional, they're organized in a way where it's easy to skip out on a few because there's so many or they're scheduled last minute. And often state board members don't have the opportunity to grill and ask the right questions on accountability, academic or financial accountability. That needs to change. Like I said earlier about the manual input, I would make an effort to attend all these TEA meetings, optional or not, and ask the questions. What are your metrics for academic quality? If it's out of state, why are you coming in here? And what are your metrics for making sure quality transfers? I also believe on a bigger level, charter schools should be held accountable with elected boards. I support legislation to make that happen. Earlier I was mentioning the 2-page PDF. I see that so often on the ground where parents say, oh, the school got a 99 out of 100. Excellent, let me put my student there. What does that actually mean? We got to break that down. We need to have more accessible, transparent information on what do we mean by a good school. And that starts with the charters.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.